have begged for this. I've made it my mission in life to get more help for Crystal's case. So to see it actually happening was very overwhelming. I believe 100% in my heart that Brooks Houck is responsible, and that's my opinion. For me to see him walking around town, I just think in the back of my mind, it's not going to be forever. So try not to focus on the now and try to focus toward what's going to happen one day.
In the Crystal Rogers murder case, Brooks Houck is asking the Kentucky Court of Appeals to weigh in after a Nelson County judge denied his request for a reduced bond. Now, Houck is asking to reduce his bail from $10 million to $500,000. At $10 million, Houck's bond is the highest ever in the state's history. But the state says he is a multimillionaire and therefore a higher bond is warranted. Well, Houck is charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Crystal Rogers, more than 8 years ago. The story of her disappearance in 2015 became the hit podcast Bardstown. Well, Houck had been named the prime suspect in the case back then, but he wasn't arrested until last month. Now, at a hearing last week, Houck pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors argued against reducing his bail, saying they have evidence that 5 members of Houck's family secretly recorded their grand jury testimony, which is, of course, a violation of the law. Citing that and the need to protect future witness testimony in the case, the judge denied the defense counsel's motion to reduce bail. And the brother of Brooks Houck is facing new scrutiny in the case as well. At an arraignment for Brooks Houck last week in the 2015 murder of Crystal Rogers, prosecutors announced they believe they have the gun used to murder Crystal's father the following year. Now, it was the first time the two cases had officially been linked by investigators. Now, they said they purchased the gun from Brooks's older brother, Nick. Now, Nick is the former Bardstown police officer who was actually fired for interfering with the investigation into Rogers' disappearance. Court TV has obtained a 2015 interrogation video of Nick Houck. Here's a portion where an FBI agent tells him that he failed his polygraph test.
You know, when somebody fails a polygraph, the reason I did the test like this, you saw that numbers test, right? When I had you write the number 5 and I had you tell me that you didn't write it, and it jumps off the screen that you're telling me the truth. There's areas right off of that list you did the exact same thing. And you know where they are. And what that is a guilty knowledge test. That's what I call it. And what that is your heart and your mind betraying what your body knows to be the truth. My master's degree is in forensic psychophysiology, which means the mind and the body interacting to determine the truth in an interview setting. That's what I do. This is actually admissible in court because it's scientifically valid. So when I say you know more than what you told me, I'm not guessing that, okay? And when I tell you, polygraph, you didn't do well. I don't show people that chart. I'll show you. You probably don't care, but just so you know the facts. That's the results on your test. Exception indicated, 100%. And then greater than 99. What's greater than 99? 100, right? What are the questions? Do you know where Crystal is right now? Are you hiding any information about what happened to Crystal? Okay. You didn't tell me the truth on both of those questions. So, I mean, I'm telling the truth. I'm not going to sit here and make up a bunch of stuff and try to put the read techniques with it. We're past that. So the cat's out of the bag as far as your guilty knowledge.
All right, now during that interrogation, Nick Houck kept saying that he had nothing to do with Rogers' disappearance and that he had no knowledge of what happened to the mother of 5. At one point, telling the polygrapher that he's, quote, talking crazy.
What is it you haven't told me that's causing you such concern here?
I'm not going into to everything that's happened. You know, I mean...
Like what? I don't
have nothing to do with this. Guys showing up at my house?
Look, this is the first day you and I have met, right?
Yes.
Okay, have I been anything but cordial with you here today?
And I think I've been the same way with you.
I'm not accusing you of not being.
Okay, there's nothing else to discuss here.
Well,
I mean, if I had something to give you, I would. I don't.
Put yourself in my seat for just a second, okay?
Okay.
And I'm talking to someone who's a family member, essentially, is missing and possibly dead. And you're sitting here, and that individual, who you know nothing about, never met before today, right? But you've seen some interviews where he hasn't been completely truthful about things. Not just kind of, haven't been completely truthful about a couple.
I've been 100% truthful.
Listen to what I'm saying.
You listen to what I'm saying. I've been 100% truthful.
Why are you yelling at me?
Well, because you're telling me I'm lying, and I know I'm not. I know the truth, you know? And I've been 100% honest
the truth.
with you, the grand jury, and everybody else I've spoken
No,
with.
you haven't. Here's what I'm getting. Well, you just said.
Yes, I have.
No, you haven't.
I most definitely have. And if you don't want to believe it, that's your issue. It's not mine.
It's not just me. I showed you.
Dude, I don't give a what your computer said, okay?
I think you do.
I'm telling you that I have been 100% honest with you.
Is this how you act? When does this act this way towards Crystal?
When somebody, is this how I act toward Crystal? Yeah. I act toward people that accuse me of lying when I'm not lying.
Did she
That's
accuse
how
you
I
of
act.
lying?
No, I didn't know Crystal.
Then why are you getting so angry?
Because you're calling me a liar.
No,
That's
I'm
why.
just calling you a liar.
Okay.
I'm not cussed you.
I don't like it when people call me a liar.
Now, Nick Houck has not been charged in connection with the murder of Crystal Rogers or her father. And while Brooks Houck is facing murder charges in the Rogers case, her body has never been found. All right, joining me still is criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marsha Minot. Marsha, so much to discuss here. Let's begin with Nick Houck. All right, let's look at Nick. All right, Nick failed a polygraph. We know that that's not enough. You can't bring that into court. But they also bought a gun from him that they believe is connected to the murder of Crystal Rogers' father, Tommy Ballard. Now, in court, they didn't go so far as to say it is the actual gun. They said essentially 4 of the 5 markers match. But we all know that 5th one is super important, so we don't know if it's ultimately going to match. But what does that all mean in terms of this other shoe dropping and suggesting that this former officer who tampered with the case back when he was fired might end up charged with a crime in this case?
Well, you know, when a state wants to bring a case to justice, which is to the courthouse, you'll find that when they don't have sufficient evidence, they will sometimes grasp at straws. And that means arresting individuals around you in hopes that they can strong arm those individuals either into confessing that you were involved or to giving them immunity to testify against you to try somehow to connect you to the murder. It is clear that this gentleman is strong on his allegation or his statements that he is not involved in the murder. And I don't think charging someone else around him is going to get him to move, because you could tell how upset he was in that video footage. So hopefully the state can get some forensics together, and just talking about markers and lying about whether polygraph can be used in court or not is just not going to be enough.
Yeah, it's not. And you know what's interesting? At least part of the method to the madness by the prosecutors was that they didn't want the bond to be reduced on Brooks Houck, his brother. And it worked. The judge basically said that in light of 2 things, and we'll talk about both of them. Number one, the fact that Tommy Ballard, who was searching for the person who killed his daughter and ended up being killed about a year later, he was killed, a possible witness, someone who might have had some information. But now, the Houck family members are going into the grand jury, and they're recording it so they can make sure their stories match up. Essentially, they said that on tape. I can't see any way that an appeals court is going to look at this and say that this judge made a mistake.
No, you're not going to get that overturned. Misconduct on the part of these individuals by going in, recording proceedings that are not permitted to be recorded is not going to get the court overturned. That's just not going to happen. It also brings suspicion to them and their family members, because it says, what are you trying to hide? What are you looking for? Because if you're telling the truth, there's no need to record the grand jury proceedings, other than the fact that you're trying to tamper with evidence. So it doesn't look good, and I don't think it's going to be overturned.
And I can't stress enough, and I want you to tell our viewers just how serious of an offense this is. I mean, what we know about the Houck family is that, you know, and dare I say it, but they're kind of like the Murdochs of Bardstown. They're people with a lot of money. There are people with a lot of power in the area. And just the fact that they would even try something like this, and their brother, who was a police officer, would interfere in an investigation like this, suggests that, just tell our viewers just how serious of an offense this is.
That's extremely serious, and judges can bring charges against all the individuals who recorded it. It can be a violation of a court order if they were court ordered not to do it, and the judge would be able to sentence them to the maximum amount of time, because it would be easy for the court to be able to prove, if they have the recordings, that these individuals violated the court order. So it's extremely serious. In fact, grand jury proceedings don't even permit for defendants to be present in them. So for these individuals to have been granted an opportunity to be present, it had to be something associated with, if you're law enforcement officers, there are exceptions in some jurisdiction for law enforcement officers to be present at grand jury proceedings. So if that were the case, oh my God, they're facing serious consequences from the court, and no one should ever try that.
And I'll be honest with you, had they not tried that, I think there might have been a shot at the appeals court to get it reduced, because there was a very, very persuasive motion filed by the defense that the highest bail ever in any of the surrounding, or even in that county, had been, the highest bail had been $2 million in very similar type cases. I mean, the fact patterns are very similar. This, of course, was a little more high profile, and this guy did have a little bit more money, but the highest being $2 million, and this guy gets $10 million, there's an argument that that's punitive.
Absolutely. Bonds are not supposed to be in the form of punishment. And a lot of people get that confused, especially if you're the victim family members. I've seen people argue all the time in court. I don't want them to get out. What they did is wrong. The person comes to the table with the presumption of innocence. So for the bond to be excessive, it's as if you set no bond. There's plenty of case law across this country that says if the bond is excessive, it amounts to no bond. So yes, they would have had a strong argument that the bond is too high and that it needs to be reduced. But this conduct has totally turned that issue on its head and has now reduced the likelihood that that bond is going to be reduced.
Yeah, I think it made it null and void. It's just not going to happen. I certainly would be concerned about the protection of witnesses with this kind of activity, just as the judge said.